So this video is on comparing and ordering fractions, percents, and decimals. Make sure you are ready to take your notes. So when we want to compare fractions, percents, and decimals or put them in order, we need to either get them into the same form or into fractions with the same denominator. That makes it a lot easier for us. So if you have this in your notes packet, find it. If you don't, I would like you to write all these down with all the steps that I'm doing so that you're practicing and you have notes to look back on for what to do. I'm going to zoom in though. 4/5 and 7/8. So it's way easier for me to compare two fractions if they have the same denominator. So I'm going to find equivalent fractions of each one to change to make them the same denominator. So I know that 5 and 8 both can go into 40 equally. So we're going to change it to 40ths. So 4/5, so I'm going to rewrite it like this. And I want to get it to 40ths, which means that I'm going to times my denominator by 8. And then I do the same thing on the top, so I would end up with 32 40ths. Then we have 7/8, and we're going to times the denominator by 5 to get to 40ths. And then times 5 on the top, so we get 35 40ths. We know that 35 is greater than 32, so 4/5 is less than 7/8. We have 125 thousandths and then 10 and 2/10%. So I think it's easiest for me to, so when we have two different forms, we want to decide which form would be easier for us to change to. Well, decimal to percent, remember we just take the decimal and we move it 2 places to the right. So I can now make it 12.5%. And now we're comparing it to 10 and 2/10%. So we know that 125 thousandths is greater than 10 and 2/10%. I could have changed the percent to decimal and compared it that way as well. Okay, so then if we slide over here to 5 and 43/100ths, and then we have 5 and 2/5. So let's write this as, keep this as 5 and 43/100ths. Let's take 2/5 and change it to decimal. So remember 2/5, if we take 2/5 and we change it to tenths, so let's do times 2 times 2. This would get me to 4/10. So then this would be written as 5 and 4/10, which would be 5 and 4/10. And then I'm going to add a 0 here. Remember when we compared decimals way back when, if we add a 0, it's easier for us to compare. Now we can see that 43 is greater than 40. So 5 and 43/100ths is greater than 5 and 2/5. If you want to pause me and try these last few on your own and then come back and check, that would be awesome. So 5/6, I'm going to take 5/6 and I am going to change that to a decimal. And 6 cannot be changed to tenths, hundredths, or thousandths. So I'm going to put into my calculator 5 divided by 6. And I get 0.83 repeating. If I rounded that to hundredths, or let's say I rounded it to thousands, because this goes out to thousands, it would be 833 thousandths. And then we're comparing it to 625 thousandths. 833 is greater than 625, so that would be greater than 30% and 1/3. So 30%, I'm going to make this a decimal, actually. So let's change 30% to, remember, we take the decimal and we go 2 to the left. So we have 30/100ths, which is the same as 3/10. 1/3, if I put into my calculator 1 divided by 3, I will get 0.3 repeating. And if I round 0.3 repeating, because remember it's the same as 0.333333, I can round it to 33/100ths. So then I could go back and put a 30 back on there. So now I'm comparing 30/100ths to 33/100ths. 33/100ths is more. So we go back and we say 30% is less than 1/3. And then we have 35 hundredths compared with 3/8. So 35 hundredths, I'm going to leave as 35 hundredths. I'm going to take my fraction, and in my calculator, again, you do this with me, we're going to put 3 divided by 8 in that order, and you should get 375 thousandths. This only goes a hundredth, so let's add a 0 to make it go to thousandths. 375 thousandths is bigger than 350 thousandths. So 35 hundredths is, oops, not that way, less than 3/8. So if we need to order fractions, percents, and decimals, if we're given a set of numbers, so find this in your notes, otherwise you're going to write these 3 down, and we want to put them in order from least to greatest. So we have a fraction, we have a decimal, and a percent. I would say changing it to a decimal or percent is the easiest, because if you change it to fraction, then you would make them all fractions, and then you would still need to get them all into the same denominator. So for this one, let's change them into percents. So 1/4, if I change 1/4 to a decimal, if I put in my calculator 1 divided by 4, I would get 25 hundredths, which then I would move my decimal 2 to the right, and it would be 25%. 1/4 is a fraction that you want to kind of try to remember that it's 25%. You can kind of think of it as like a quarter, like 4 quarters in a dollar. So a quarter is 1/4 of a dollar. A quarter is 25 cents. So that's how we kind of can think of it that way. 2/10, move the decimal 2 to the right, add that 0. My decimal lands there. So I have 20%, and then I have 22%. We put them in order from least to greatest based on the form that you were given. So obviously 20% is the least, so I'm going to rewrite it in the form that it was given to us, then 22%, then 1/4, because it was given to us as 1/4. 1 2/10, 100%, and 8/9. So again, let's change it to, why don't we change it to decimals? So we'll leave it as 1 2/10. Decimals, 100%, I move the decimal 2 over, which is 1. 100%, we just should kind of know that it's 1 whole, so it's 1. So 1 2/10, 1. And then if I put into my calculator 8/9, well, I'm still going to put it in to find the decimal, and I get 8/9 is 0.8 repeating, but I also know that it's for sure going to be the least amount because it's less than 1. Everything else is 1 or greater. But 8/9 is 0.8 repeating, so that's obviously the least. So then in order from least to greatest would be 8/9, 100%, and 1 2/10. Pause me and try this one on your own, and then I'll zoom in and do the other one after this one. So 40%, so I'm going to decide to write these as percents. So 40%, 2 to the right, add a 0 is going to be 240%. So 2 4/10 is 240%, which makes sense because remember 1 is 100%. So 2 4/10 is going to be a lot greater than 100%. 2 to the right is going to be 4%. 4/10 is the same as 4/10. Go 2 to the right, 40. So that would also be 40%. So then let's write it, least to greatest. 4% obviously is the least, so 4/100. And then we have 4/10 and 40% tied, and then 2 4/10. And then this last one, if you want to pause me and try it, you can. We have some improper fractions, we have mixed numbers. Let's try to just change them all into mixed numbers and go from there. So 11/4, 4 goes into 11 2 times, because 4 times 2 is 8. with 3 left over, so we'd have 2 3/4. 2 6/10 is going to be 2 6/10. 13/5, 5 goes into 13 2 times, so 2 and then 3 left over, so 2 3/5, and then 3 1/10 is 3 1/10. So now what we can do is change these into decimals, I would say. So 2 3/4 is going to be 2 75/100. 2 6/10 is going to be 2 6/10. 2 3/5 is also going to be 2 6/10, and then 3 1/10 would be 3 1/10. So then we would order that, and we would have 2.6, 13/5, 11/4, and 3 1/10. So our last problem is putting the following numbers on the number line. So I want you to take these numbers, change them all into decimals, because we're going to put them in a number line between 0 and 5, and then draw your number line and put them in. So I want you to pause me and then come back and check your work. Okay, so first of all, what I did was I took all of the numbers and I put them all into decimals. Then the next thing that I did was I put them in order from least to greatest by their decimals. Then what I did was I labeled my number line, and I noticed that it was going up by ones every other line. So then I put in the 5/10, 1, 1 5/10, 2, 2 1/2, and so forth. And then lastly, I'm running out of colors here. Then I put my dots on the number line where they went, and I labeled them back into the original form. So you check your work, make changes as necessary. Make sure you hang on to these notes. Have a wonderful day.